Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. Well, the NBA Finals just ended last night, and we're going to do a recap call right now with Troy West from AllPlaysWin.com. The Spurs 1-5, and did anyone see that coming? Troy West from AllPlaysWin.com certainly did before the series. He told us that he loved the Spurs, and this one loved it so much he felt a little bit funny giving it out for free, but he did it anyway, went exactly as he expected it to, and that capped off a huge, awesome, and profitable NBA playoffs in videos with us. Troy, thanks for being back with us.
Hey, thanks a lot, Pete. I appreciate it. For those of you out there that are watching this that think the NBA is fixed or the conspiracy theories, I think this NBA series proved otherwise with 4 games by double digits.
Yeah, look, I mean, if at the beginning of this series, I would have probably said the best bet is that it goes 7 games, but that's why you're you and I'm me. All right, let's go down your record in the playoffs. It was just an awesome record. Of course, you covered every game with us in the finals, and you went 4-1 against the spread out of those games. You picked 4 out of 5 spreads. You nailed the Spurs at -123. Overall, you covered 9 series with us, and it was mostly chalk. Out of those 9 series, 8 of them were won by the favorites, but you picked enough favorites to come out ahead. The one underdog that actually did win was Portland +175 over Houston, and you did pick that one, nailing it. So you went 5-4 overall in the series, plus 1.8 units, and but it was even better than that because, like, for instance, the Clippers against the Warriors, right? The Clippers were -360. You said you liked the Clippers, but you also said that you expected it to go 6 or 7 games, and it did go 7 games. Troy West from AllPlaysWin.com. What do you have to say for yourself?
Hey, thanks a lot, Pete. I appreciate it. Hats off to our company. We've just been outstanding all NBA playoffs long. As I said, Pete, and the Spurs, that this was a series that we truly had no doubt in. With many other series leading up to this one, we had no doubt, and it's just been an outstanding playoffs. The way that we structured the units, we've knocked dead every big unit play that we've put out on the board, Pete. Hats off to the company. Hats off to everybody that's joined and come on board to play these games, Pete. It's truly been an outstanding month of May. We've done a great job in June, and feather in the cap last night as the Spurs dominated the Heat one more time.
So let's discuss, how you handicap, what you look for when you're handicapping these NBA playoff series, because, your losers were the big underdogs, right? You thought that Indiana +306 over Miami might have a little bit of value. Portland +317 over the Spurs might have a little bit of value. But then again, you also took OKC at -420 and the Clippers at -360, and that's very risky because if one of those loses, all of a sudden your record overall is going to be negative. So how do you handicap these series? What do you look for to find value?
Yeah, Pete, the biggest thing to me is when you go into these series, a lot of people look straight for the superstars in these series. So the Kevin Durant's, the LeBron James. I technically try to shy away, but like you said, we did go to OKC in a couple of those series because we did see value. Pete, when I really thought that this Spurs team was legitimate was in that Oklahoma City series. I thought that series would be a series that would go 7. It went 6. Right. But really, if you watch that series closely, the Spurs dominated. And that's when I watched that series close enough. You saw the team ball. You started seeing the role players like the Patty Mills, the Marco Bellinellis, the Kawhi Leonards. These role players really started to elevate their game. And as I watched that series, I thought to myself, there is no way that this Spurs team's not winning the title. So as you progress through the playoffs, you really look for these role players. Who's going to step up? We obviously know Greg Popovich is the best coach in the NBA, bar none. And you really start as they progress through the playoffs, you start to think, okay, this Spurs team is the real deal. This team's not going down.
Right. All right. So maybe that's one of the keys is that in the playoffs, especially in the early rounds, you kind of want to watch the games to get an edge because, in the regular season, the playoffs, teams can become very, very different entities and they can make big shifts. And during the regular season, you can kind of just go by the numbers and find your edges that way. But the playoffs is kind of a different animal. So it seems like, and actually our NHL playoffs we covered with Joe Duffy, he said the exact same thing. He said that watching the playoffs is when he knew that the LA Kings were going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Sounds like you're implying the same thing about the NBA playoffs.
Absolutely, Pete. Too many times we hear the big names, the LeBron Jameses, the Dwayne Wades, the Chris Bosches, even the Ray Allens of sort. But then you literally look at guys. I mean, Pete, if you ask yourself, who would you rather have, Ray Allen or even a guy like Patty Mills? Of course, everybody would say Ray Allen, but you look at the impact of a guy like Patty Mills, even in yesterday's game, 5 of 8 from three-point land. You look at guys like Kawhi Leonard, outstanding, all NBA playoffs, ends up getting the MVP. You hear these names at the start of the playoffs, Pete. Most people would say, well, God, those guys haven't done anything all season long. What makes you think they're going to do stuff? But the impact has just been phenomenal. So I think it's really important to pay attention to these role players and the depth because you get late into these NBA series, depth plays a huge part. The Spurs obviously had that.
All right, so let's talk about the Spurs. Everyone's talking about it. Tim Duncan, 5 NBA championships, right? Unbelievable. Just such an impressive team. It's almost like the rules don't apply to them. Rules of like back-to-back games, rules of getting older, rules of lack of marquee players. It's almost like they're playing a different style of basketball. So I guess my first question is, why did the Spurs then struggle against Dallas in round 1?
Pete, I think when they got into that round 1, a lot of it is matchup stuff. The Dallas Maverick team, even though they were the 8th seed, came in with a lot of talent, guys that have had playoff experience, Vince Carter, Dirk Nowitzki. We know they have talent. They've got a good coach in Rick Carlisle. It's a good team. You got to understand that the matchups were a little bit different. And I think it took the Spurs a little bit of time. Even in the regular season, as good as they were, they didn't break any records. They weren't blowing out teams left and right. This team, I think, really started to click when they hit that Portland series. And then after that Portland series, you kind of had this gut feeling that this team was the real deal. So I think when they initially entered the playoffs, it took a little bit of time for some of the younger guys like the Kawhi Leonards to really get used to playing. And this team ball really elevated as they got out of that series. But I think matchup problems were a little bit different in that series versus the Miami Heat series.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, after Game 6 of the Dallas series, who would have predicted that the Spurs were going to go on and, roll over everyone and beat the Heat in 5 because, the Spurs had already lost 3 to Dallas and they had lost all 6 of the first games against the spread. And then starting with Game 7 of that series, it's just like they turned a corner. So is there any way we could have seen that coming?
I don't know if you could have actually seen it coming. I think, like I said, when you really started to see it was that Portland series. And as you talked about, I was one that maybe thought Portland would create a matchup problem. But I think once they got through that Dallas series, they maybe knocked off a lot of the butterflies that they may have had. And this team really started to click. They started moving the ball better. Team defense got better. And role players, as I talked about, really elevated their game to a whole nother level. Nobody was talking about Kawhi Leonard in that Dallas series, even the Portland series. Now he's the MVP Finals, MVP of the NBA Finals. So those guys really elevated their game to another level. And I think you saw that really once we hit the Portland series.
So looking forward, the Spurs have been just, if you, for a bunch of years now, if you just bet on the Spurs any which way you want, money lines, spreads, futures bets, playoffs, regular season futures, whatever, the Spurs were just beating their spreads and making you money no matter how you bet them. And this year was no different. They've just been a machine. How long do you think this will continue? Do you think it's going to happen again next year?
I truly do believe it's going to happen again next year. I don't think any of these guys are going to retire. Pete, if you watch this team closely, even the older players, the Tony Parkers, the Tim Duncans, the Manu Ginobilis, I mean, my God, Manu Ginobili posterized Chris Bosh last night. These guys are getting old, but they're also getting better. I don't necessarily think these guys have lost the step. Manu Ginobili's been outstanding. Tony Parker's been outstanding. And Tim Duncan can still dominate in the paint. You don't watch these guys and go, man, they're really dying out. I think they're done after this year. No, this team, if they want to, Pete, they will continue this success. Greg Popovich, we know he's coming back next year. I get the feeling that this team is coming back. Why not? Why can't they repeat? I think they've got a chip on their shoulder to potentially repeat. So still a lot to play for the Spurs, even with 5 titles.
All right, well, we will see. Next year, of course, the key, as always, is valuation. And even if the Spurs are as good or better than they were this year, if they're overvalued, they'll be a good bet against. But that has not been the case with the Spurs for a long time. All right, Troy West from allplayswin.com. Congratulations one more time on your phenomenal success handicapping the NBA playoffs with us. And thanks so much for all the free winners.